The first anonymous note appeared on my desk the morning after I announced the renovation plans. They're not who you think they are. Watch your back. The handwriting was shaky, like someone had written it in a hurry, and the paper was torn from a regular notepad. I brushed it off as a prank, but something about those words sent a chill down my spine. My name is Remington, and 3 months ago, I inherited this beautiful but neglected apartment building in Barcelona from my uncle Xavier. As an architect who spent years designing soulless office buildings, this felt like my chance to create something meaningful, a haven for artists and creative souls in the heart of the city. You're making a huge mistake with these renovations, Serena said, leaning against my office doorframe. Her smile was warm, but something in her eyes made me uneasy. The building's charm is in its authenticity. I looked up from my blueprints. The plumbing is failing, Serena. The electrical system needs a complete overhaul. I'm not just doing this for aesthetics. Of course, of course. Her husband Moses appeared behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders. We're just concerned about rent increases. Some of us have been here for years. I've already promised everyone their rents won't change significantly, I said, standing up. I'm not here to push anyone out. Time will tell, Serena whispered, just loud enough for me to hear as they left. Later that afternoon, I was inspecting the crumbling courtyard when Ainsley, one of the younger tenants, approached me. Paint stained her overalls, and her curly hair was tied up in a messy bun. Don't let them get to you, she said, sitting beside me on the worn stone bench. Some of us are actually excited about the changes. Thanks, Ainsley. I just wish everyone could see what this place could become. Oh, they see it, came a voice from above. Annalise, my elderly tenant from the third floor, was watering her window plants. That's exactly what worries certain people. Change threatens those who profit from decay. Before I could ask what she meant, my phone buzzed. It was Martina, my best friend since college. Rem, you won't believe what I just heard, she said when I answered. Someone's spreading rumors about you planning to convert the building into luxury condos. I felt my stomach drop. What? That's ridiculous. Who would say that? Take a wild guess. Martina's voice was tight with anger. Our lovely power couple has been quite chatty at the local cafe. I ended the call and walked to the central stairwell, where Jarvis, a retired architect who'd lived here for decades, was examining the ornate railings. Beautiful craftsmanship, he mused, running his hand along the metal. You know, your uncle used to tell me stories about this building's history, the secrets these walls hold. Jarvis, can I ask you something? Have you noticed anything odd about Serena and Moses? He adjusted his glasses, looking at me intently. Let's just say they've been very interested in property values lately. Very interested indeed. That evening, as I was locking up my office, I found another note slipped under the door. This one was longer. Check the building codes from 1992. They've done this before. Don't trust their smiles. I crumpled the paper in my fist, my mind racing. The renovation plans spread across my desk suddenly seemed more like battle plans than blueprints. Uncle Xavier had always told me that buildings were more than just structures. They were living entities that held people's dreams, fears, and secrets. Walking up to my apartment on the top floor, I passed Moses in the hallway. He was on his phone, speaking in hushed tones. Yes, everything's proceeding as planned, he was saying. The new landlady won't be a problem much longer. He saw me and quickly ended the call, flashing that practiced smile. Evening, Remington. Beautiful sunset tonight, isn't it? I smiled back, my heart pounding. Gorgeous. Perfect weather for plotting, wouldn't you say? His smile faltered for just a second before he recovered. Planning, you mean? Always planning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window looking out over the Barcelona skyline, the warning notes spread out on my desk. The building creaked and settled around me, as if trying to tell me something. Uncle Xavier had trusted me with his legacy, and I was starting to understand why he'd been so specific about who should inherit it. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Meeting tomorrow. Café Rosetta, 9 a.m. Come alone if you want to know the truth about S&M. I looked down at the courtyard, where Serena and Moses's window glowed with warm light. They were laughing about something, their shadows dancing on the walls. My fingers traced the building plans, feeling the texture of the paper, the weight of responsibility. Game on, I whispered to the empty room. Let's see who really knows how to build something lasting. The Café Rosetta was quiet at 9 a.m., just a few locals sipping their morning coffee. I chose a corner table, my back to the wall, watching the door. At 9:15, just as I was about to leave, Annalise walked in, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. We need to talk about Serena and Moses. You sent the notes? She nodded, ordering an espresso when the waiter passed. I've seen this before. 3 years ago, in Madrid. They were tenants in my daughter's building. They started just like this, friendly, charismatic, always ready to help. What happened? They organized the tenants against her, claimed she was neglecting the building. By the time she realized what was happening, they'd already filed multiple complaints with the housing authority. She lost everything. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Why are you telling me this now? Because it's starting again. Listen. 2 tables over, I recognized the voices of my tenants, Maria and Paolo. Serena was with them, her voice carrying just enough to reach us. Poor Remington, Serena was saying. She means well, but she's in over her head. These renovations are just an excuse to raise rents. My contact at the housing authority says she hasn't even filed the proper permits. I started to stand, but Annalise grabbed my wrist. Wait! Watch! Serena continued, her voice dripping with false concern. We need to protect ourselves. I have a lawyer friend who specializes in tenant rights. He can help us file a preemptive complaint. That's a lie, I hissed. I filed everything weeks ago. Of course you did, Annalise said. But by the time they verify that, the damage will be done. They're very good at this. Back at the building, I found Ainsley in the courtyard setting up her easel. Have you noticed anything strange lately? I asked. She put down her paintbrush. You mean besides Moses taking photos of every crack in the walls? Or Serena hosting community meetings in their apartment every night? Community meetings? Yeah, started last week. They're calling them tenant protection sessions. I went to one. It was intense. They had documents, photos, even a PowerPoint about negligent landlords and gentrification. My phone buzzed. Martina was calling. Turn on the local news, she said without greeting. Now. I rushed to my office and pulled up the news website. There it was. Local residents protest controversial building renovation. The photo showed Serena and Moses standing with a group of people holding signs outside my building. Signs I hadn't seen. A protest that had apparently happened while I was at the cafe. Those manipulative bastards, I muttered. There's more, Martina said. Check your email. A formal complaint had been filed with the housing authority, citing unsafe conditions and tenant harassment. The timestamps showed it was submitted just hours ago. A knock at my door made me jump. It was Jarvis holding a stack of papers. You need to see this, he said, spreading them on my desk. Building records from the past 5 years. Look at the pattern. The documents showed a trail across Spain, buildings where Serena and Moses had been tenants, each following the same script. Complaints, protests, media attention, and then suddenly they'd move on, leaving chaos in their wake. They're professional agitators, Jarvis explained. They target buildings with potential, create problems for the owners, then either force a sale or negotiate massive payouts to leave. Why didn't anyone stop them? By the time anyone connects the dots, they're gone. They're careful, they use different names, different lawyers. A commotion in the hallway drew us to the door. Moses was leading a camera crew through the building, pointing out every flaw, every imperfection. Serena followed, speaking dramatically about unsafe conditions and tenant rights. This historic building is being destroyed by inexperienced management, she was saying. Our community is under attack. I stepped forward, but Jarvis pulled me back. Not now. They want you to react. They're counting on it. That evening, I sat in my darkened office, listening to the murmur of voices from another of Serena's meetings. Through the gap under my door, I could see shadows moving, hear snippets of conversation. She's probably not even qualified. Moses's voice drifted down. I heard she bribed the inspector, Serena added. We can't let her destroy our homes. Someone else chimed in. My hands shook as I opened my laptop, starting a new document. If they wanted to play this game, fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't just any landlord. I was an architect. I knew every inch of this building, every regulation, every loophole. Two can play at this game, I whispered, beginning to type. The sound of my keyboard mixed with their plotting voices, a strange symphony of betrayal and determination. In the courtyard below, Ainsley's easel still stood, her half-finished painting capturing the building in warm, honest colours, everything I was fighting to protect. The war had begun, and I intended to win. The permits are all forged. Moses's voice came through clearly on the recording. Our friend at the council will backdate everything once we're done here. I sat in Martina's apartment across town, playing back the conversation I'd captured using the building's newly installed security system. Serena and Moses had no idea that their late-night strategy session in the courtyard had been recorded. Got you, Martina said, her face lit by the laptop screen. This is exactly what we needed. There's more, I forwarded to another clip. Serena's voice filled the room. Once we get enough signatures, we'll file the class action. The insurance company will settle. They always do. We just need to make sure nobody finds out about Valencia or Madrid. Or Seville, Moses added with a laugh. That was our best payout yet. I stopped the recording, my hands trembling with anger. They've done this 6 times in the past 3 years. 6 buildings, 6 communities torn apart. But they've never gone up against someone who was ready for them, Martina said, pulling up a spreadsheet. Look at this, I've tracked every property they've targeted. There's a pattern to their legal filings, their media campaigns, everything. A knock at the door made us both jump. It was Ainsley, looking breathless. They're calling an emergency tenant meeting, she said. Right now, something about structural damage they've discovered. I grabbed my jacket. Perfect timing, let's go. The building's common room was packed when we arrived. Serena stood at the front, pointing to photos projected on the wall, close-ups of cracks and water damage, carefully framed to look catastrophic. These conditions are unacceptable, she was saying, and our landlady's so-called renovations will only make things worse. That crack is from your apartment, I said loudly, stepping forward. The one you created last week when you accidentally backed your moving truck into the wall. Serena's smile flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I connected my phone to the projector. Let's talk about Valencia, Serena. Or should I call you Sarah, like you did there? Or Eleanor, like in Madrid? The room went silent as I played the recording. Moses's face turned pale when he heard his own voice discussing forged permits. This is ridiculous. Serena tried to laugh it off. That recording could be anyone. Really? Jarvis stood up from the back. Because I have photos of you outside the council office with the same permit officer you mentioned. Taken yesterday. Annalise joined in. And I have emails from my daughter's tenants in Madrid. They recognized you immediately. The room erupted in confused murmurs. I could see some tenants backing away from Serena and Moses, while others looked uncertain. You're all being manipulated, Moses shouted. She's the one trying to force us out. Is that why you've been filing false maintenance requests every day? Ainsley stepped forward, holding up a stack of papers. I work from home. I've seen you deliberately clogging drains, breaking tiles, creating the very problems you're complaining about. Serena's composure cracked. You have no proof. Actually, I clicked to the next slide. I do. Security footage from the past week. Would you like to explain why you're pouring cement down the drainage pipes at 3 a.m.? The room exploded in angry voices. Maria, who had been one of their strongest supporters, stood up. You told us Remington was neglecting repairs, but you're the ones causing the damage? It's not what it looks like. Serena started, but Moses grabbed her arm. We need to go, he muttered. Now. Running away again? I called after them, like you did in Seville. They pushed through the crowd, but Jarvis was blocking the door. The police would like to talk to you about those forged permits, he said calmly. They're waiting outside. Serena's face contorted with rage. You think this changes anything? We still have enough signatures for the class action. Your insurance company will settle just to avoid the publicity. About that, Martina stepped forward, waving a folder. I've already contacted your previous victims. They're all willing to testify. And your signatures. Half of them are from people who don't even live here. The sound of police radios crackled from the hallway. Moses made a break for the fire escape, but 2 officers were already coming up the stairs. This isn't over, Serena hissed as they were led away. You have no idea what you're doing. I watched them disappear into the police car, feeling no satisfaction, only relief. The real work was just beginning, rebuilding trust, completing the renovations, healing the community they'd tried to destroy. Annalise touched my arm. You know they'll try something else. Let them try, I said, looking around at my tenants, my neighbours, who were already starting to talk among themselves, sharing stories, realising how they'd been manipulated. We're ready now. Ainsley was already organising a real community meeting for the next day. Jarvis was explaining the actual renovation plans to a group of interested residents. The building seemed to breathe easier, as if a poison had been drawn out, but as I walked back to my office, I couldn't shake the feeling that Serena was right about one thing. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. There's a legal loophole we can use, Jarvis said, spreading architectural drawings across my office desk. It's buried in the 1987 Barcelona building codes, but it's still valid. I leaned forward, studying the complex diagrams. 3 days had passed since Serena and Moses' arrest, but their lawyer was already making threats. They'd been released on bail within hours. Look here, Jarvis pointed to a section. Any building designated as a cultural heritage site can undergo mandatory safety upgrades, with costs legally passed to tenants who've been found damaging the property. And guess what? Martina burst in, waving a folder. Your uncle applied for heritage status 15 years ago. It was approved but never registered. We just need to activate it. A knock at the door interrupted us. It was Jalen, a quiet tenant from the 3rd floor who rarely attended meetings. Can I talk to you privately? Once the others left, Jalen sat down, fidgeting with his keys. I need to confess something. Serena and Moses. They paid me to document everything you did. Every conversation, every maintenance decision. My stomach dropped. You were spying for them? At first, yes. But then I saw what they were really doing. He pulled out his phone. I kept recording, but not for them. Listen to this. He played a recording from 2 weeks ago. Moses's voice was clear. Once we get control of the building, we flip it to our investors. The heritage status makes it worth triple. They knew about the heritage status? I asked. They knew everything. They've been planning this for months. But here's what they don't know. I recorded all their meetings with their investors, including the ones where they discussed bribing officials. I stared at Jalen, reassessing everything I thought I knew. Why are you showing me this now? Because they called me this morning. They're planning something big and I don't want to be part of it anymore. Later that afternoon, I met with Ainsley in the courtyard. She was helping other tenants plant a community garden, turning the space Serena and Moses had vandalized into something beautiful. We need to be careful, I told her, watching the residents work together. They're not done fighting. Look what I found in the basement, she said, pulling out a stack of old photographs. Your uncle kept records of every renovation since 1960, including the original heritage application. I flipped through the photos, stopping at one from 1985. Wait, what's this? The image showed a distinctive mosaic pattern beneath layers of paint, exactly the kind of architectural detail that would strengthen our heritage claim. Jarvis, I called out. He was supervising some electrical work nearby. We need to check something. We spent the next hour carefully scraping away paint from a corner of the courtyard wall. Gradually, an intricate mosaic emerged, a masterpiece that had been hidden for decades. This changes everything, Jarvis whispered. With this, the heritage status isn't just valid, it's urgent. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m., Plaza Real. Come alone, or the heritage evidence disappears forever. It's a trap, Martina said when I called her. They're getting desperate. Good, I replied. Desperate people make mistakes. That evening, I gathered everyone in the common room. The walls were covered with renovation plans, heritage documentation, and evidence of Serena and Moses's sabotage. They think they can threaten us, I addressed the room. They think they can destroy our home. But they forgot something important. This building isn't just property, it's our community. And we have proof of everything, Annalise added, holding up a USB drive. Copies stored in 3 different locations. Suddenly, the lights went out. In the darkness, we heard footsteps running down the hallway. The electrical panel, Jarvis shouted. We rushed to the basement, flashlights illuminating our way. The panel door was open, wires exposed. On the wall, someone had spray painted. Last warning. They're trying to scare us, Ainsley said, her voice steady. But they don't realise we're not afraid anymore. As if in response, our phones buzzed simultaneously. A mass email from Serena's lawyer, threatening legal action against every tenant who supported the heritage application. Perfect, I smiled, surprising everyone. That's exactly what we needed. What do you mean? Jalen asked. They just admitted in writing that they knew about the heritage status, which means every act of vandalism they committed isn't just property damage. It's a crime against protected architecture. The basement filled with determined voices as we formed our plan. Each threat, each act of desperation from Serena and Moses only made our case stronger. Tomorrow at the plaza, I said, they'll learn what happens when you underestimate the power of community. As we climbed back upstairs, the emergency lights flickered on, casting long shadows. But instead of feeling ominous, they felt like spotlights, illuminating our path forward. The real renovation was about to begin, not just of the building, but of justice itself. The Plaza Real buzzed with morning activity as I sat at a cafe table, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. At exactly 10 a.m., Moses appeared alone, looking considerably less polished than usual in wrinkled clothes. "Where's Serena?" I asked as he sat down. "Dealing with our lawyer," he said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. "Inside is everything you need to know about the heritage status. Walk away now, and it's yours." I didn't touch the envelope. "Funny, I was about to make you the same offer." His confident smile faltered. "What?" "Right now, workers are uncovering the original mosaics in the courtyard. The Heritage Commission is documenting everything, including the damage you caused. You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone, showing him the live stream from our security cameras. The courtyard was filled with official-looking people in hard hats, carefully revealing more of the hidden artwork. "That's not possible," he muttered. "We checked everything." "You checked what my uncle wanted you to find. He knew someone would try this eventually. That's why he buried the real heritage application under a fake rejection." Moses's phone buzzed repeatedly. He checked it, his face growing paler. "This isn't... Serena needs to... Oh, and those investors you were meeting with," I continued. "The ones promising to triple your money. They're actually working with the anti-fraud unit. Every conversation recorded." He stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. Several cafe patrons turned to stare. "You don't understand what you're doing," he hissed. "We have connections. Like the permit officer who was arrested this morning?" I smiled. "The one who confessed to falsifying documents for you in 3 different cities." Moses ran, pushing through the crowd. He didn't notice the police officers who had been sitting at nearby tables, who now followed him casually. Back at the building, the Heritage Commission's presence had drawn a crowd. Television crews interviewed Jarvis about the architectural significance, while Ainsley explained the restoration process to fascinated onlookers. "Look what we found," Annalise called out as I entered the courtyard. Behind a section of damaged wall, workers had uncovered a date stone, 1892. "This makes the building even older than we thought," the commission head said, photographing the discovery. "The protection order will be absolute." My phone rang. "Martina." "Turn on the news," she said. "Channel 6. I rushed to my office just in time to see Serena being led out of her lawyer's office in handcuffs. The caption read, "Property fraud ring uncovered. Multiple cities affected." "The lawyer cracked," Martina explained. "Apparently Serena threatened to expose his involvement if he didn't help them one last time. He chose to make a deal instead." A commotion outside drew me to the window. Moses had returned, drunk and angry, screaming at the Heritage Commission workers. "This building is nothing," he shouted. "You're all nothing." Annalise stepped forward, her voice cutting through his rage. "This building is everything you'll never understand. It's home, it's family, it's history." Other tenants joined her, forming a line between Moses and the workers. Even those who had initially supported him stood with us now. "You want to know what this building really is?" I called down from my window. "It's karma." Police officers approached from both sides of the street. Moses saw them and deflated, all his fight evaporating. "You've ruined everything," he said quietly as they led him away. "No," I replied. "You did that yourself." That evening, as the Heritage Commission packed up their equipment, the tenants gathered in the courtyard. The newly uncovered mosaics glowed in the setting sun, telling stories of the generations who had lived here before us. "I found these in the basement," Jalen said, bringing out boxes of old photographs, pictures of the building from every decade. "Look, there's your uncle." We passed the photos around, each image revealing another layer of history we'd almost lost. "They never understood," Jarvis said, touching the restored wall gently. "A building like this isn't just an investment. It's a living thing." My phone buzzed with a text from Martina. "Police found their storage unit, documents from every building they targeted. This goes deeper than anyone thought." Another message followed quickly. "Their previous victims are organising. Class action lawsuit. They want you to testify." I looked around at my tenants, my family now, sharing stories and planning future renovations. The building hummed with new energy, as if it too was celebrating its salvation. "We should do something," Ainsley suggested, her eyes bright with inspiration. "Something to mark this day." "Actually," I smiled, "I have an idea." I pulled out the original blueprints, spreading them on a table. "See this space here? It was meant to be a community centre. What if we restored it, made it a place where people could learn about architecture, about preservation, about fighting back?" Annalise added with a knowing smile. The courtyard filled with excited voices as everyone gathered around the plans, adding suggestions, sharing visions. Above us, the evening star appeared in the darkening sky, watching over our building as it had for over a century. This was just the beginning. "They're calling for an emergency tenant meeting," Serena's lawyer announced, standing in my office doorway. "All remaining supporters. Tonight at 8. "Remaining supporters?" I raised an eyebrow. "From jail?" "My clients have rights. They're still legal tenants until the court decides otherwise." After he left, Martina burst in. "You won't believe this. They're claiming the heritage status is actually why they did everything. They were protecting the building from your renovations." "Of course they are," I sighed, checking my phone. 3 missed calls from the police detective handling the case. "They're desperate." The afternoon brought a parade of journalists to our door, each hoping to break new angles on what they were calling the Barcelona building scandal. Serena and Moses' scheme had affected properties across Spain, and victims were coming forward hourly. "Another interview request," Ainsley said, sticking her head in. "This time from a documentary crew." "Tell them to talk to Jarvis," I replied, studying the growing stack of legal documents on my desk. "He knows the technical details better than anyone." At 7:30, people began gathering in the common room. To my surprise, about 20 tenants showed up, mostly older residents who'd been initially swayed by Serena's manipulation. "They're scared," Annalise whispered to me. They signed papers they didn't understand, made statements to the housing authority. The lawyer arrived precisely at 8, wheeling in a projector. My clients have prepared a presentation, he announced, dimming the lights. Serena's face appeared on the screen, a recorded message from before her arrest. She looked perfectly composed, every word calculated. Dear neighbours, she began. By now you've heard many lies about Moses and me. But ask yourselves, who really threatened our community? Who pushed for changes none of us wanted? Turn it off, a voice called from the back. It was Maria, one of their strongest former supporters. We know the truth now. You need to hear their proposal, the lawyer insisted. No, you need to hear ours. Jarvis stood up. We've been doing some research of our own. He connected his laptop to the projector. Documents filled the screen. Bank transfers, shell companies, a web of fraud spanning years. Your clients didn't just target buildings, he continued. They targeted people. Elderly residents pressured to sign away their rights. Families threatened with eviction. All while they collected payouts under different names. The lawyer's confident demeanour cracked. These documents aren't admissible. They are now, Martina entered, followed by 2 police officers. The judge just approved the warrant. All their accounts are being frozen. But the tenant agreements, the lawyer started, were obtained through fraud. One officer finished. We'll need statements from everyone who signed them. The room erupted in voices as people came forward, eager to share their stories. The lawyer retreated to a corner, frantically making phone calls. There's something else, Jalen spoke up. Show them, Remington. I projected the building's original blueprints. See these signatures? Every major renovation since 1892 was properly documented, including the heritage features Serena and Moses tried to destroy. Which makes their actions criminal vandalism, the second officer added, taking notes. Suddenly the lawyer's phone buzzed. His face went pale as he read the message. Serena's asking for a deal, he announced to the room. She's willing to testify against Moses and their other partners. Of course she is, Annalise muttered. The meeting dissolved into smaller groups, tenants giving statements to police, others examining the evidence with growing anger. The lawyer slipped out quietly, leaving his projector behind. Later that night, as the last police officer left, I found Ainsley in the courtyard. She was sketching the newly uncovered mosaics by lamplight. Look at this pattern, she said. It tells a story of community, of people coming together. Our ancestors knew something we almost forgot. What's that? That buildings aren't just walls and windows. They're promises we make to each other. My phone buzzed. A message from the detective. Both suspects requesting separate deals. Case breaking wide open. More arrests tomorrow. They're turning on each other, I told Ainsley. Just like they turned everyone else against each other. Karma, she smiled, adding details to her sketch. The building remembers. Upstairs, I could hear the sounds of life returning to normal. Children laughing, music playing, neighbours talking. The fear that had gripped us for months was finally lifting. Martina called one last time before midnight. The news is going international, she said. Real estate fraud rings in 3 countries. You started something bigger than we imagined. I walked to my window, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, Serena and Moses sat in separate cells, their carefully constructed scheme crumbling around them. They'd thought they were so clever, playing people against each other, destroying communities for profit, but they'd never understood the one thing that mattered most. The heart of a building beats in its people. And our heart was stronger than ever. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more legal battles, more stories to untangle. But tonight, the building stood proud, its secrets finally revealed, its future secure in the hands of those who truly called it home. The courtroom fell silent as Serena took the stand. 2 months had passed since the arrests, and the trial was finally reaching its climax. She looked smaller now, her designer clothes replaced by something plain and unremarkable. Ms. Oliver, the prosecutor began, please tell us about the Valencia property. It was Moses's idea, she said immediately, not looking at her former husband sitting at the defense table. He found the building, identified the weak points, chose the targets. Liar! Moses stood up, his face red. Tell them about Madrid. Tell them whose idea that was. The judge banged her gavel. Order! I sat between Martina and Jarvis, watching their carefully constructed partnership dissolve into mutual accusations. Behind us, dozens of their previous victims filled the courtroom. And the Barcelona property? The prosecutor continued. We had investors, Serena said. Important people. They told us which buildings to target, provided the fake documents, helped us pressure owners to sell. Objection! Moses's lawyer jumped up. My client wasn't involved in any document forgery. Really? Serena laughed bitterly. Show them your phone, Moses. Show them the photos you took of every document before we shredded them. The prosecutor projected a series of text messages onto the courtroom screen. Moses to Serena. Got the heritage papers. Once we destroy these, they'll never prove anything. Those messages are private, Moses shouted. They're evidence, the judge corrected. Please continue, Ms. Oliver. For the next hour, Serena detailed their entire operation. Each revelation brought gasps from the audience. The network was larger than anyone had imagined, involving corrupt officials, fake investment firms, and professional agitators hired to disrupt communities. During a break, Martina showed me her laptop. Look at this. Their scheme is all over international news. Similar cases are being uncovered in France, Italy, even Germany. Good, Annalise said from behind us. Let everyone see what happens when you treat homes like poker chips. Back in session, Moses finally broke. Fine. You want the truth? We're not the real criminals here. The whole system is rigged. We just played the game better than most. By destroying people's lives? I stood up, unable to contain myself. By turning neighbours against each other? The judge allowed my outburst, seeming to understand the emotion behind it. You don't understand anything, Moses sneered. Your precious building. It's nothing, just bricks and mortar. We saw an opportunity and we took it. No, I replied calmly. You saw a community and tried to destroy it, but you failed. Serena's face crumpled. For the first time, she looked directly at me. We never meant... It wasn't supposed to go this far. Save it, her lawyer muttered. The evidence continued mounting. Bank records showed millions in fraudulent gains. Emails revealed conversations with corrupt officials. Photos documented the deliberate damage they'd caused to multiple properties. The prosecution rests, the prosecutor announced, late in the afternoon. The judge took only 30 minutes to reach her decision. The courtroom was packed as she delivered the verdict. Serena and Moses Oliver, you have perpetrated a scheme of extraordinary cruelty and calculation. You didn't just commit fraud, you attempted to destroy the very fabric of multiple communities. She paused, looking at each defendant in turn. The court sentences you each to 8 years in prison. Additionally, you will make full restitution to all affected properties and residents. Moses slumped in his chair. Serena began to cry. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court recommends a full investigation into all named conspirators, including government officials and investment partners. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Jarvis handled most of the questions, explaining the technical details of their scheme. Ainsley stood quietly sketching the scene, capturing the moment justice was finally served. What happens now? A reporter asked me. Now, I smiled. Now we rebuild. Not just the building, everything they tried to tear down. That evening we gathered in our newly restored courtyard. The mosaics gleamed in the lamplight, no longer hidden under layers of neglect. Residents shared food and stories. Children played in corners that had once been filled with debris. Look what came today, Martina said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter from the Barcelona Historical Society. Our building had been designated a protected landmark, ensuring its preservation for future generations. Your uncle would be proud, Jarvis said softly. My phone buzzed with a message from the detective. More arrests coming tomorrow. This goes higher than we thought. You started something important. I looked around at my neighbours. No, my family. Maria was teaching younger residents about the building's history. Annalise was organising a committee to help other buildings protect themselves from similar schemes. Jalen was documenting everything for a book he planned to write. They never understood, Ainsley said, putting the finishing touches on her sketch. A building isn't just an investment opportunity. It's a living thing with a heart and soul. And now everyone knows it, I replied, watching my community heal and grow stronger, their voices filling the courtyard with hope and possibility. The building seemed to sigh contentedly around us, its walls holding not just our homes, but our shared victory over those who had tried to tear us apart. And this is where it all started, I told the group of architecture students gathered in our courtyard. Right here, where they tried to destroy these mosaics, the autumn sun filtered through the restored glass ceiling, casting rainbow patterns across the newly polished tiles. Our building had become a case study in community preservation, attracting visitors from across Europe. But how did you know they wouldn't succeed? One student asked. Before I could answer, Ainsley emerged from her studio, paint smudged on her cheek. Show them the wall, Remington. I led the group to what we now called the Victory Wall. A stunning mural Ainsley had created, incorporating photographs and news clippings that documented our struggle. At its centre was the original anonymous note that had first warned me about Serena and Moses. Sometimes, I explained, you have to lose faith in people before you can find faith in community. My phone buzzed, Martina sending updates from the ongoing investigations. 3 more corrupt officials arrested, 2 investment firms shut down. The ripple effects of our case were still spreading. Miss? Another student raised her hand. Is it true they're teaching this case in law schools now? Along with the new tenant protection laws it inspired, Jarvis answered, joining us. He pointed to a framed document on the wall, the Community Defence Act, that had been passed in response to our story. The building's front door chimed. A small group entered, looking around nervously. I recognized them immediately from the news, residents from another targeted building in Madrid. We need your help, their spokesperson said. They're trying to do to us what they tried to do here. Then you've come to the right place, Annalise said warmly, emerging from her apartment. Welcome to the Community Defence Network headquarters. I dismissed the students and led the Madrid group to our newly renovated community centre. The space that Serena and Moses had once used for their manipulation meetings now served as a resource hub for threatened communities. First, I said, spreading out blank papers, tell us everything. As they shared their story, more residents drifted in. Maria brought coffee. Jalen took notes for his upcoming book on property fraud. Even the children stopped playing to listen, understanding the importance of what was happening. See this? I pointed to the heritage features we'd uncovered. Your building probably has similar historical elements. That's your first line of defense. But the developers, one woman started. Cannot touch protected architecture, Jarvis finished. We'll help you document everything. My phone buzzed again. This time it was the detective. Serena requesting another meeting. Says she has more names to share. Let her talk, I typed back. Every name helps another community. Outside, tour buses sometimes slowed as guides pointed out our building, not for its architectural beauty, though that had been fully restored, but for what it represented. Resistance, unity, justice. The best revenge, Ainsley said, reading my thoughts, was turning their weapon into our shield. She was right. Every tactic Serena and Moses had used to divide us had instead brought us closer. Their attempt to destroy our home had given us a mission, protecting other homes, other communities. Look what we found in the archives, Jalen called out, holding up a yellowed photograph. It showed the building in 1892, surrounded by scaffolding, workers posing proudly. They built this place to last, he said. Not just the structure, the spirit. The Madrid group left with hope in their eyes and plans in their hands. As I walked them out, more visitors were arriving. Journalists, activists, people seeking inspiration or assistance. Sometimes I wonder, Martina said, watching them go, if Serena and Moses realize what they actually accomplished. They wanted to break us, I replied. Instead, they made us unbreakable. In the courtyard, children played among the restored fountains. Artists worked in studios that had once been abandoned storage spaces. The community kitchen buzzed with activity as residents prepared for our weekly dinner gathering. My uncle's old office, where I'd first found those warning notes, had become a planning centre for the Community Defence Network. His architectural drawings still hung on the walls, but now they were joined by maps showing our growing network of protected buildings. "Ready for the meeting?" Annalise asked, checking her watch. I nodded, gathering my materials. In 10 minutes, we'd be video conferencing with communities across Europe, sharing strategies, offering support, building connections. The building hummed with life and purpose, each restored feature a testament to what we'd overcome. From the mosaic tiles beneath our feet to the stained glass above our heads, every inch held stories of defeat transformed into victory. "You know what the best part is?" Ainsley said, adding final touches to her mural. "They thought they were destroying a building, but they actually built something much stronger. A movement." I touched the wall, feeling the familiar warmth of home. They never understood the most important architectural principle of all. "What's that?" asked one of the Madrid visitors lingering in the doorway. "The strongest foundations," I smiled, "are built with trust, not fear."